What's up, everybody, and welcome to The Horror Within Me, a podcast dedicated to the world of horror. I am your host, Eric, and each week I'm going to rate and review a new movie or TV show that falls within the horror genre. Now, this is a show for horror fans, hosted by a horror fan, who's just here to share my opinions and experiences with my fellow horror friends in hopes that you may gain something new to watch or not watch, and really just talk about all things related to this beautifully dark and spooky world that we call horror. So if this sounds like a show for you, stick around, we're going to have a lot of fun. So let's get started. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Horror Within Me. It's me, Eric, your host, and this week's episode we are going to be talking about the 2022 T. West film X. Now, if you've been listening to the show, I was supposed to have reviewed this movie sometime last summer, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, and then I ended up not seeing it and picking something else, whatever life was going on at that time. So I ended up not reviewing it, but it was a movie that I still wanted to eventually revisit, and the hype for that started to grow more and more with the newest name in the horror genre that I kept hearing was Mia Goth. And then there was the release of Pearl, and then there's another movie that I honestly cannot remember the name of what it is that she's in now too, but really piqued my interest, and so I was like, I want to revisit and go back and watch X, not only for Mia Goth, but Jenna Ortega, Brittany Snow. We'll talk about that. Just piggybacking off of last week. So a little bit about my week. Oh, okay. This week has been so strange and busy for me. So I've picked up a part-time night job for some extra cash on top of my already full-time job. Now, of course, now that this is my first week doing both jobs, it's been hectic and hard finding the time to watch the movie and create my notes and find time to sit and record, and then after that obviously do the minor edits that I have to do to my show, because of those of you who listen know that my show is based on very little editing. It's a sit-down conversation want you to feel like we're in the room together and I'm just talking to you about a movie. So that's the one blessing of this podcast that I have, is that the editing process is so minimal, which is a lifesaver. But I'm not going to lie, it was very difficult finding the time to figure this out again. And one of the things I don't want to happen is, in my journey of working and why I need to do what I need to do, is I don't want to lose what I love in my passions and my hobbies. And that's especially this podcast and this platform that I have and share with you guys, because it's really reminded me parts of me that I don't want to lose again. So I will fight like hell to keep the content fresh, to keep the podcast going, as well as the social pages. But if you notice there's a little bit of lack of the activity on the social pages, I apologize. It's just like I said, it's going to take a little bit of adjustment period. This is my first week, and I'm really trying to figure that out. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into this week's episode, because I just mentioned how fucking busy I am, and I want to get into this and talk about it, because this is the highlight of my week, was this movie, and you're going to find out why in just a moment. So jumping right in, we're going to talk about the first steps, which is we're going to read the synopsis for the movie X. Synopsis is as follows. In 1979, a group of young filmmakers set out to make an adult film in rural Texas, but when their reclusive, elderly hosts catch them in the act, the cast find themselves fighting for their lives. This movie was released March 18th, 2022, which is almost a year, coming up on a year next month. And it stars Mia Goth as Maxine and as Pearl, Jenna Ortega as Lorraine, Brittany Snow as Bobby Lynn, Kid Cudi as Jackson, Martin Henderson as Wayne Owen Campbell, Martin Henderson as Wayne Owen, I am so confused. I have my things messed up on my notes. Martin Henderson as Wayne and Owen Campbell as RJ. That was so hard to get out. What the hell? You could tell I've rushed the note typing a little bit. Anyway, and Stephen Uri as Howard. Forgive me for that terrible butcher of trying to do that cast. My God, let's just go on and pretend that didn't happen. It's directed by T. West, written by T. West, produced by T. West, Jacob. These names are going to be terrible too. Jacob Jeff, Kevin Turin, and Harrison Crease. It is coming in at a total runtime of 1 hour and 45 minutes. Under the genre, it's considered a horror, a mystery, and a thriller. And it is rated R. And there is a tagline for this movie. The tagline is dying to show you a good time. Now, let's back up a little bit. Everyone's heard of T. West because of this now. And, it's also an A24 film, which we know A24 is like Hereditary, Midsommar, things like that. So that was when I really decided I wanted to look more into this movie. That's why I remember now with the podcast when I did Midsommar. But yeah, T. West, the name keep popping up too. So he's, building his name in the horror genre as well here. I thought it was funny that it's considered a mystery thriller. I don't know why it's considered a mystery. I don't think it's a mystery, but who am I? I'm just a horror fan reviewing on a podcast for people, right? I'm no one important. Just kidding. I'm very important. Know my name. Anyway, I don't think it's a mystery. Definitely horror. Definitely thriller. Definitely fucking rated R. By the synopsis alone, it's a group of people that are going to set off to make an adult film. And please, I don't need to tell you what an adult film is, right? Like, we all know that it's a fucking, they're going to make a porno. Okay? That's what they're going to do. So it's impossible to not be rated R. I mean, if they would have tried it any other way, it would have been like fucking a Cinemax After Dark special or something probably. And even that still needs to be rated R. Anyway, let's move on to the IMDb rating. The IMDb rating is a 6.6 out of 10. And Rotten Tomatoes is a 94% tomato meter and a 75% audience score. We have another week here where the tomato meter is higher than the audience score. But I mean, like, 94% is so fucking impressive for our critics on this movie. I mean, for a horror movie, we are looking at, a new horror movie. So we know that the newer horror movies are trying to be a little elevated, a little more depth, as opposed to your 1980s Friday the 13th slashers, right? But I think it's still very impressive. Very, very impressive. So kudos to this movie for pulling that off for the tomato meter. So before we get into the top 3 reviews, best and worst reviews on IMDb, we're going to take a moment and we're going to do what we always do, which is this week's terrifying trivia question. All right. So for those of you who are listening just to hear my opinion and enjoy the show that have already seen this movie, this terrifying trivia question is for you. For those of you who have not seen the movie, you can still listen to the question and then listen to the answer at the end of the episode and see if you spot it after you've learned what it is. So anyway, this week's terrifying trivia question is, what was the name of the song that was playing in the truck when RJ stops in front of Pearl? Stick around to the end of the episode to get the answer. It's time for my favorite part of the show. Best and worst reviews on IMDb. We always start with the best because they're not as fun to me as the worst. Sometimes they are, but anyway, coming in first, best review, we have a 10 out of 10, and we're going to read. The title of this review is, "This is the atmosphere we all want." In style of older classics like Texas Chainsaw comes this 2020's modern horror. You can love it or hate it. This movie is not so popular without a reason, and you've already seen it, or at least you will. Even though I gave it the highest score, it has flaws. In terms of story in general, it's a bit underwhelming. But actors are all great, style is outstanding, horror movie lovers will enjoy it for that alone. In the last few years, there aren't a lot of horror movies that deserve classic status, maybe around dozens since the beginning of 2020s. This one is among those. Great review. I was confused on the last part, or the beginning part of the first paragraph where it says, "And you've already seen it, or at least you will." I don't. I mean, okay. Um. All right. I don't get it. Uh, I don't know. I don't get it. Um. And then here we go with this again. Even though I gave it the highest score, it has flaws. Nothing's perfect, people. If you're looking for a perfection, it's very hard to achieve. Go talk to a therapist if you're a perfectionist or looking for that, and especially other people's shit. Um, it has flaws in terms of story in general. It's a bit underwhelming. Um, I think that's kind of the point. I don't think that it's. I'm not sure what this person was looking for, but I agree and disagree with that comment, that statement. I think that if you, it's not so much underwhelming. It's more you have like they give you the plot and they put it right in front of your face, but there are more aspects to it that you really should like think in on. It's a little more depth. It'll be underwhelming if you're not going in depth with it. Um, what else? I think that um, horror movie lovers will enjoy it for that alone. But the actors are all great, style is outstanding. Um, yes and no, because there's a lot of other things besides great style and actors in a horror movie. If depending on what you're looking for, I think the killing and the gore aspect, horror movie lovers that like gore will like this for that aspect of it alone. That I would say. Um, in the last few years, there aren't a lot of horror movies that deserve classic status. I think, true, kind of. There are many that have really changed the genre and have made themselves modern day classics that people will learn about the way that we have with our classics from the 70s, 80s, 50s, 60s, all that shit. But yeah, no, it's not a bad review. A little confusing. Doesn't give much away. Moving on to the next review from IMDb for the movie X. We have another 10 out of 10 titled, "This is for the real classic slasher fans." There really isn't much to say other than this movie was so intense. It might seem a little slow at first, but it gives enough background and dialogue to keep things interesting. The gore was brutal, and the characters were almost all likable. I felt like I was watching a classic slasher movie just with better story and graphics. I loved this review. I think it was short and sweet and really hit the spot on the movie. I think that it is intense. It is intense because you know it is leading up to something that's going to happen. That's going to be brutal. We don't know what, but we can see like the opening scene of the movie. No spoiler is like the aftermath of the night before. So it is like and then it's like 24 hours later. So it's leading like up to this gruesome crime scene, right? Um, it does feel slow at first, and I can kind of I get what they're saying because it takes a while to get there, and I even had a thought myself of like, wow, it took an hour, I think it was, before we got into any kills. But then I immediately thought, but in today's horror, especially people like me, I want some depth in my characters. I don't want disposable characters. I'm not a disposable character person. I like to feel connections to people and get some storyline. So again, I agree with their statement that says enough background and dialogue to keep things interesting. I think that's extremely accurate for this movie because I can't always be pulled off. Sometimes it's just drawn out, and you're like, "What the fuck is going on?" It's like watching The Sims just walk around without giving them any actions to keep things interesting. Um, the gore was brutal, and the characters were almost all likable. Again, I really agree with that. I think the gore was very brutal. I really appreciate it, and I'm someone that when it's like overdone gore, it's like a little. Then it becomes borderline too cheesy for me. I think that this was a really fine line for that. I think they did a really good job with that, and I also agree that the characters were almost all likable. I really, really enjoyed all of the characters. I really, really enjoyed all of the characters as well. And it did feel like I was watching a classic slasher with better story and graphics. I 100% agree with that too. This is a quote unquote period kind of piece in the 70s, late 70s. I believe it was 1979. It's said in the beginning. So it gives you a certain feeling of that kind of time and when those movies were being made and then turned it into what people were lacking in that area. Moving on to the last, best, worst. Hold on. Moving on to the best. My God, today. Try one more time. Take 3. Moving on to the best review on IMDb for the X movie, titled, quote, "I do not accept a life I do not deserve," end quote. Spoiler alert, a character in that repeats this line over and over and over again. So I thought that was pretty clever that they made it the title because they're like feeling this movie, right? And the review is as follows. "I can't stop thinking about this film. This film was everything I wanted it to be and more. The grossness of the old couple were uncomfortable to watch, you know what part. But it's a horror, so I don't expect to be comfortable the whole time. The pacing was really nice, too. It was a slow build-up, but that left enough time and space for character development. Also, there was a lot of things early on in the film which foreshadows things to come, so it can be rewatched multiple times. The acting was amazing, and the way the hair/makeup team transformed Mia into Pearl was crazy. She was unrecognizable. This was a ton of fun, so please watch it if you can." Okay. This person really, really liked this movie, and good for them because I think it deserves this kind of praise as well. The grossness of the old couple were uncomfortable to watch. Abso-fucking-lutely. I mean, like, I was by myself watching this movie. My husband did not watch this one with me, and he was okay with that. He was just not interested. But I think vocally, audibly, had like made noises in this scene they're talking about. I was like, oh, like it just, and it's not a quick fucking scene. No pun intended. Oh God, sorry. But I agree. It's a horror film, so I don't want to be comfortable the whole time. I'm not sitting here fucking at Disneyland on the teacups or something. You know what I mean? I don't know why I use that as an analogy. Just scratch that too. Again, my mind is fried. The pacing was really nice. It was a slow build, but again, it left enough time for space and for character development. Please leave space for character development in any genre of fucking movie. We want character development, and anyone who doesn't want that and just wants mindless killing, go to fucking Tubi. I can't watch Tubi movies. There are people out there watching Tubi movies. I'm sorry. It's just, I can do it for like a laugh or something, but I don't think I'm going to be ever reviewing one of those movies. So please don't hold your breath out for that. Anything. The foreshadowing, I can think of one thing that kind of foreshadowed something, a death in the film. Other than that, I don't know. I'd have to, like I said, go back and rewatch it. And I would rewatch this movie again with my my husband and our friend Jenny if they would like to watch it. But definitely not a child's movie. Even though some movies you watch or you think are like, oh, you know, certain kids, you like them watch certain horror movies. This one I just think is probably not one to do that with for very, very obvious reasons aside of it's very graphic for other terms with language and all nudity and things like that. But that completes the top 3 best reviews on the movie X from IMDb. It's time to do my favorite part, which is the top 3 worst reviews of the T West movie X on IMDb. Coming in first, we have a 1 out of 10 titled Typical T West Fare. Oh, that's just typical T West. Like, I don't know what that means. But anyway, maybe I don't know enough of his work. Here we go. An hour into the movie before anything of note happens. Then, the next 40 minutes where a little bit happens. Lackluster story using all the old horror tropes whilst actually making them worse. The guy cannot do horror stories, aspires to be Wes Craven but ends up more like Wesley Crusher. I wonder how much of the advertising budget was spent on paying people to leave glowing reviews. Okay, nobody's paying nobody to leave fucking reviews. Let's just be honest. There might be some. I just don't believe it. There's enough people that are fans of people that they don't need to worry about that too much. An hour into the movie before anything of note happens. If your only thing you're looking for in this movie is a kill scene, then yes, an hour into the movie before a kill scene happens. The next 40 minutes where a little bit happens. The next 40 minutes are where the rest of the kills and fight scenes happen. So not a little bit. A lot happens. Here we go with the big words. lackluster story using all of the old horror tropes. And I love the word they use the word whilst, actually. Whilst. Why are we using whilst? I don't think it's a lackluster story and all the old horror tropes. There's a kind of a reason for the old horror tropes if you're paying attention to the movie and its setting and what it's talking about and the undertones of other slashers for the time. Of course it is. I don't know who. Okay, the guy aspires to be Wes Craven, or he can't do horror stories. He aspires to be Wes Craven, but ends up more like Wesley Crusher. Who the fuck is Wesley Crusher? I've never heard of this name. I don't know what kind of read this is to this man, but okay. And like the way that the review is written, it's like sentence, double space, sentence, double space, sentence. Like it's so fucking weird. Just what is this? Typical T West. Okay. Then why are you okay? If it's typical T West and you feel like it's nothing and you clearly aren't a fan of him, why are you watching his fucking films? Jesus Christ, people. I say it every week. Don't put yourself in situations that you're not going to enjoy. If you fucking know you don't like that kind of work or that person, don't fucking watch it. I'm not out here reviewing fucking films I don't have an interest in the beginning. Like, even last week's Skinamarink was terrible to me. But it piqued an interest, and I hoped for the best because it was very divided on likes and not likes, and I ended up being on the not like, but I didn't like go into it knowing I was going to be fucking completely underwhelmed. Anyway, moving on to the second worst review from IMDb, titled, it's a 1 out of 10, and it's titled, A Bore, Same Old Crap, Just Added a Porn Mix in It. Here we go. No spoilers. Let's be honest here. This movie was a total and complete garbage. It was like they tried to take Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Evil Dead remake, The Visit, and throw in some porn to make this crap fest. Boring, no plot, no character development. Half of these reviews have to be from brain-dead millennials and Generation Z kids. I have seen thousands and thousands of horror movies. This one was in the top 10 worst. I don't... Clearly not a fan of the movie. I completely disagree. Boring, no plot, no character development. There's a whole fucking plot, dude. A whole goddamn plot to this movie. How did you miss the plot to this movie? And no character development. What? Jenna Ortega's character, a fucking lone, had a whole arc and character development in the fucking film. And then there's other things. I don't know what you missed. What were you paying attention to? Same old crap, just added a porn mix in it. Okay. It didn't add a porn mix. It added a adult film storyline to a slasher, a weird slasher, because I don't even know, like, I guess it could be kind of slasher, but like the ideas, the way that it wasn't boring. It was very uncomfortable in different ways. What generation are you? Brain dead millennials and Generation Z kids. Are you a boomer? Are you a boomer that somebody left unattended and you got a way to find a post on IMDb? Is that what happened? That's all I'm going to leave with that review. We're going on to the final worst review from IMDb for the movie X. Just titled simply, terrible. Here we go. It isn't a porno movie. It isn't an erotic movie. It isn't an horror movie or suspenseful movie. It isn't anything but a total waste of time. Takes too long for anything to finally happen, and when it does, it is totally predictable. What a terrible waste of time watching sex cliches, exaggerated old age stereotypes, and a complete lack of suspense, horror, or anything worthwhile. Why even bother wasting money or time filming this? Question mark. Sorry, I tried not to laugh. I tried to get through it. There's just a lot of typos and weird shit going on in here. They spell suspense a lot with a C, and it's just fucking weird to me. It isn't a porno movie. Well, fucking duh. Bitch, go online and watch Pornhub or fucking something if that's what you're looking for. It isn't an erotic movie. No, it's a fucking horror movie. It is a horror movie. But why would you start with it isn't a porno and it isn't an erotic movie when it's a fucking... Clearly, it's not supposed to be. This isn't... Okay, they missed the fucking memo. They missed the assignment. They didn't understand what this was. It wasn't anything but a total waste of time. Okay. Takes too long for anything to finally happen. Not really. Again, there's character development. There's a storyline that they're fleshing out. There's a lot of things that go into this before it's just a bunch of people getting murdered by other people. There's a whole thing that happens in between in the first hour that is critical to the storyline and critical to the plot. I'm not sure. Like, I think they missed the message. Sex cliches, exaggerated old age stereotypes. That is the point. And it's not, I don't think it's an exaggerated old age stereotype. I think it's a real topic that isn't discussed enough because we do this thing in America where we write off our old people. We write off the elderly. We don't like to think about them. We don't like to think that they used to be people. And when somebody puts that in front of our face, we think it's a stereotype. You want to use the word stereotype and just because you think you're going to sound cool throwing that out there, and it's not. And sex cliches, again, is it a cliche? The world of adult films and is very taboo. Again, why are you shying away and you think it's a sex cliche, but is it really a sex cliche? I didn't think so. I think it shined a light on an area that is not given enough attention for mainstream people to talk about. People get very uncomfortable with sex and elderly people, and the two topics alone, people don't discuss it. Nobody wants to hear about it. You even hear like, oh, I don't want to think of that. You know what I mean? Like, clearly this was above your comprehensive level. And that concludes this top 3 best and worst reviews from IMDb for T West X. Moving on to the next part of the show. My favorite thing from the movie, it's very simple. Jenna Ortega's scream. And not Jenna Ortega's character in the movie Scream. Like, she literally screams in the film at one point. It is curdling. It is a Scream Queen worthy scream. Fucking loved it. That I had to pick something that I loved the most out of the film, and oddly enough, yes, her fucking scream was my favorite part. And that doesn't take away anything from the film. I just really fucking like that. And what I didn't like the most, I literally sat around trying to find something that I really, really didn't like about the film. I thought about saying like how long it took to get to a kill, but then I didn't not like that. I really appreciated the character development, so that's not something I didn't like. So I finally landed on something. I had to pick something. I'm like, well, that teacher's like, I don't give perfect scores. I had to take a point off or something. So my thing that I took was it seemed to have copied and pasted a lot of Texas Chainsaw aspects. So what I mean by that is they're literally in 70s. It's Texas, and they're in like a van just like that. And there's even like a stop at the gas station on their way to where they're going before it's the farmhouse. Like, that's what I mean by copied and pasted. Again, I was understanding the underlying tones of it's kind of very similar to the Texas Chainsaw. They were kind of, in my idea, of paying homage to a classic slasher, but giving it elevated characters and stuff. So I just, like I said, it was almost like copy and paste setting of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And it's not the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So that was the only, like, if I had to pick something to like nitpick, it was that. Other than that, I couldn't think of anything else I really didn't like. So before we move on to my rating system and my final review, we are going to answer this week's terrifying trivia question. And this was the question again, if you forgot already. What was the name of the song that was playing in the truck when RJ stops in front of Pearl? And the answer is Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult, which was released in 1976. And I thought it was funny because Don't Fear the Reaper was also in Halloween Ends at the end of the movie, or another part of the movie as well. Also released in 2022. I wonder if they knew. Well, actually, this was released before Halloween Ends, so it's kind of funny. But yeah, that song was picked twice to be put in horror movies for the year 2022. Another little fun fact there. So moving on to my rating. What do I rate the 2022 T West film X? I give it, we're going to use video cameras because they're shooting a porn film. an adult film. I give it 9 out of 10 video cameras. I really enjoyed the film. I think it deserves a 9 out of 10. I understand why the critics gave it a 94%. I really enjoyed it. I wasn't sure about it, but definitely checked a lot of boxes off in my taste of horror films and what I wanted to see in this one. And this is my final review that I have written. Here we go. Ready? Final review. X presents the audience with uncomfortable topics such as porn, sexual freedom, aging, and religious judgments, and turns it into a horror movie that doesn't disappoint. Viewers expecting a mindless slasher will not pay enough attention to the messages being sent out. This movie makes you uncomfortable in all the ways a horror movie should and does not hold out on the gore. The cast was excellent, and the cinematography was beautiful. And that is my final review on the movie X. And just want to touch real quick on the topic of the cast. They were really fucking phenomenal. And I haven't seen Brittany Snow in anything in a while, and I fucking loved her. And her character was probably my favorite character in the movie. I love Jenna Ortega, and she did awesome too, as always. And I am very excited that I was finally able to watch Mia Goth in this, and she is as amazing as everyone is saying she is, and I am so excited that she is breaking out into this genre as well. And I can't wait to watch Pearl, which, spoiler alert, is going to be the next week's episode, because we're going to do it back to back. I'm going to find time to watch Pearl, and that'll be next week's episode. But if you want to watch X, if you haven't seen it or you want to watch it again and you don't own it, it is streaming now on the Showtime app, or if you have Showtime on demand, if you're a cable, pay for cable. But that concludes this week's episode. So everyone enjoy your week. Wish me luck with, juggling all that I am juggling. And when you're looking for more content, go on over to the social pages, go onto the website, and also send me an email if there's a movie that you think I should watch and review, and let me know. But anyway, until then, bye everybody. Thanks again for joining me on this week's episode of The Horror Within Me. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review wherever you listen to your podcast. And for even more Horror Within Me content, visit my link tree at linktr.ee/horror within me for links to the website, my Patreon, and all of my social channels to stay up to date on all the spooky stuff that we're doing. So be safe, and until next time, stay spooky.